Lupin III Immortal Bloodline has arrived. The latest Lupin project in the Lupin III saga and the latest Lupin animated movie within the past 30 years. I, of course, had to catch it in theaters during its very limited weekend run in the beginning of January. As a big Lupin fan, and finally getting the opportunity to catch the next part of the Quickeverse Lupin project, I had to check it out, and I have so many thoughts about this project and how it all went. Let's get the main thing out of the way about this review. This review took me some time to come out, not as soon as many others have done theirs. Truthfully, I didn't do it for some time as I was really sitting and was thinking it over, as I never had a Lupin project cause me so much grief. I didn't really enjoy it. I took my time looking at the movie and the intended purpose of the saga by absorbing the author's intent. My issues reside in how the movie was executed as a standalone film, meaning plot, theme, and character execution, and how it is part of the saga that Takeshi Koike made and how it ultimately pays off. Obviously, spoilers moving forward, so just a fair warning. First off, is the movie good? As a standard Lupin outing? Sure, it's fine. I think it very much plays by the books and doesn't do much that's exciting with the plot that it has built up for so long. The idea of a mysterious unmarked island with seemingly many mystery assassins of different backgrounds seems interesting. Hawks, Yale, I think that's how you say his name, and Bincom are some of the villains we saw in previous OVAs, those assassins, and they are featured a bit in this film, but we don't explore much of them or much of the whole concept of the clones at all. We see other enemies similar to Bincom, or figures that should be long past dead, all thanks to Mamo's cloning procedure. I feel like out of everything, that was one of the more underwhelming aspects of the film, as they very lightly touch on it and use them as enemies or obstacles, in even one case being a showcase of power of the main villain in this film, but lack the effort to dive a bit deeper into anything truly fascinating. I would have loved to see more about the cloning process or enemy making process with others like Bincom or Hawks being a modified human. There's also an archer who is clearly indicated to be from a different period in time that was used for less than 5 minutes as an obstacle and got killed on screen within a few moments. Same applies with the enemy Lupin goes against in the trailer. Even without the enemy appearances, I feel like there could have been more opportunity for them to explore how they make clones, as a different scenes show that they have a library of people to make clones of, including Lupin I, Lupin II, and Lupin III. Quick sidebar here, but wouldn't it be really cool if we were able to confront the clones of Lupin I and Lupin II and they go against Lupin? Or even introduce another Lupin clone, but show more of a deeper look into that process. I feel like the movie could have had the room to explore that, but I digress. Either way, we get nothing despite some minor footage of the weird enemy specimens and the fodder that they go through on the island. There was room for opportunity, but nothing felt like it was written very well. Another issue with the film is its theme. The theme is completely non-existent, and it's honestly laughable how it felt very much shoehorned into the film. The theme of the film is essentially just enjoying the experiences of life. This film makes a nod to it one time in the beginning and another in the end of the film, and honestly, doesn't do any of that through the previous OVAs or the rest of the film. In the beginning of this film, we see that Lupin's hideout was destroyed, which housed all of his stuff that he stole throughout his years. His cars, his jewelry, his works of art, everything. Now, at the end of the film, when Lupin is offered immortal life by Mamo, Lupin declines. He mentions that immortal life will not allow him to fully enjoy and bask in the experiences and memories he has gotten throughout his years of being alive. They use a hat that Lupin had in the house as the sole example of a flashback to a time where he was with someone and was given that hat or something to that effect, using it as a memory or memento to bring the theme full circle along with everything else Lupin lost. From a storytelling standpoint, I feel like the execution of the theme was bad. When we see Lupin's initial reaction to him having lost everything he had, we don't see it as a reflection of the items being a symbol of those experiences and memories, but more of a, shit, that really sucks. And I felt bad for Lupin because my train of thought immediately went, oh damn, He lost all of his stuff thanks to the villains being assholes. Now, imagine they decided to take the time to go through and explore a few of these memories they wanted to craft for Lupin. It doesn't matter what, they can craft anything with what they want to give him and it will work. It just would have been a better full circle on the theme when we eventually got to the offer of immortality. Even beyond that, this theme doesn't rear its head much at all throughout the film, showcasing the lackluster storytelling this movie has to offer. There were several other things that I felt were a big afterthought of this film as well, such as the characterization of specific characters and how they proceeded into the final steps of Lupin solving the mystery of this island. With the characters, Fujiko was a complete afterthought and you cannot change my mind on this. What was the point of her being here? Genuinely, as soon as they arrive onto the island and explore about 10 minutes at most, she gets kidnapped, stripped naked, and used as a sort of bait, after which she needs to be rescued and then given an outfit that doesn't leave much to be desired. I am very much tired of the over-sexualization of Fujiko and her lack of purpose within the Lupin franchise. I am fine when it serves a purpose or it is used as a weapon. She's a femme fatale. But when it comes to situations like this that immediately put her into a situation where she's stripped naked, it's old and very overdone. Just like the prequel ONA, Zenigata and the Two Lupins, Fujiko was captured for a specific reason, which was fantastic. They still stripped her naked for no reason. All of it very much feels like a sure, why not situation. In a sense, it shows me how the writers don't know how to write female characters within their story, as her entire role in this film past that point isn't any better. She's very much less involved and just gives dialogue about what's currently happening. Another character I take issue with is Lupin. As much as this is the Lupin III franchise, this film did not feel much like a Lupin III film or a Lupin part within the saga. This felt more like the main feature went to Jigen, Goemon, and Zenigata, as they felt the most involved throughout the film, aside from the main villain Mamo, of course. That could be due to the fact that those three were fighting for their lives throughout the majority of the action scenes in the film, while Lupin played a bit more of the investigative role. Think of it as like story A with Lupin and story B with the other three featuring Fujiko. Lupin is all about the exposition dumps and lore going on, and the other side is all the tenseness and action. With some exceptions of course, as Lupin does go against the main villain Mamo a few times. But that is really left up to the other three. Even then though, with the investigation of the Mystery Island's true identity revealed to be Mamo himself, the entire island is his body. There was a moment of film that really took me out and showed me how the writing in this film was not good. At a crucial moment, where Lupin seemingly succumbs to his injuries, sickness, the air is poisoned on the island, and falls into lava, with Zenigata horrified as he witnesses the whole thing. He tried to help Lupin, and he failed. When initially going through this situation, it plays out like that. Zenigata tries to help, fails, Lupin falls into lava, and dies. However, at a later point, when it came to Lupin showcasing the identity of the island, it then utilizes a flashback of that earlier scene, but with an additional scene on top of it where Lupin is requesting a favor to Zenigata to use a tank to blow up rocks which fell into the lava, where they help Lupin be brought to the heart of the island, or Mamo's heart. Why leave this as a flashback? Why not showcase it normally to the audience, despite the lack of context? It doesn't feel tension and doesn't give the eureka moment that we may come to expect and like about Lupin. In this case, it feels forced and out of nowhere. It completely took me out of it and just made me wonder as to why they decided to go through with this from a story point perspective. It doesn't serve the story in a way that's helpful, but makes it seem like they couldn't trust us as the audience to understand why. Maybe they rushed to get through it, but the story itself very much feels like it has holes and carelessness written all over it. This can be a story for good fun, but for a cohesive story spanning a decade into completion, I expected a hell of a lot more from Koike and the creative team that crafted this. This ultimately leads into the thing that bugs me the most about this project, despite it being the author's intent when making this saga. The villain, Mamo, is defeated, with Mamo finally making a longer appearance than before, but not being beaten either. With me going into this film, I fully expected another and possibly final piece of Lupin III media that would tackle Mamo as the final villain, finally getting the initially thought payoff from this entire series after all this time. Jigen's Gravestone, Goemon's Blood Spray, Fujiko's Lie, Zenigata and the Two Lupins, and Immortal Bloodline. All of this to tell an overarching story that leads to Mamo. This was the final project. That's it, no more. To me, the biggest problem about all of this time spent going to a seemingly alternate take of Mamo is that it was just used as a prequel to the 1978 movie Mystery of Mamo. Part of it can be blamed on the process of how plans involving Mamo weren't entirely ironed out by Koike until after Fujiko's Lie, where he then decided to bring Mamo to the forefront. This is according to the interview done by Crunchyroll, link below. However, I do think the choice of having this saga be a prequel to Mystery of Mamo is to its own detriment. This is entirely on Koike's love for the older film, but I don't think it does any favors in connecting to Mystery of Mamo, especially after watching that film once again after I watched Immortal Bloodline. Tonally, it doesn't fit. Mystery of Mamo is far more comedic and lighthearted to Immortal Bloodline's more dark and serious take. Even going into it, it doesn't make sense as Lupin is figuring out things he would have known if we went from the third saga to Mystery of Mamo. Even as a sort of spiritual prequel, I still think it falls flat and doesn't do itself any favors since the works are so different and makes Mystery of Mamo a retread of the story when it was fine as a standalone work. Despite it being his intention, I still don't think it works out the way he wanted to, as I had to search it online and see that this was 1. The finale of the third saga. Trailers didn't indicate that, and I don't watch or read interviews like that too often. And 2, it had to be mentioned in an interview and some other places I saw on a couple Reddit threads that indicated that Koike's intention was for this to be a prequel of Mystery of Mamo. Not as a spiritual prequel, but as a prequel. As someone who doesn't follow any of that stuff, I was at the assumption that there would be more in store for Lupin and Mamo in Koike's interpretation of the Mystery Mamo film. I should not have to look up stuff and find out this way to understand where the direction of the film would be going. Those were my biggest gripes about the film. There was some good things such as the animation and some action sequences. If you're in to watch this movie for a quick and fun Lupin adventure, then by all means you'll probably enjoy it. However, if you're like me and don't want to stare at a screen for about an hour and 30 minutes bored out of your mind due to a very lackluster plot with holes in its story, its characters, theming, and overall purpose in the grand scheme of the Mamo story arc that Koike created, then you probably won't enjoy it as much. Do you guys agree or disagree? I figure I am completely in the minority when I say this, so I'm curious to know how others feel for those who have been able to watch it. I know many haven't, but for those who have, let me know your thoughts. I expected a lot more from this, especially after all the build-up that leads to Mamo. Looking at The Woman Called Fujiko Mine, for example, it serves as a prequel to Part 1 of Lupin, and it fits tonally due to both being darker-natured series. It sets things into place that can make sense, such as how now Lupin and Jigen finally meeting and being partners, and Lupin already knowing Fujiko. I believe that this was done way better than what the entire third saga ended up being. Anyways, that's all I got for now. Take it easy, everyone.